Welcome everyone to the HABS 101 webinar focused on the power of plants. My name is Erica Kleitz and I will be moderating tonight's webinar. Just wanted to remind everyone that Michigan State University programs are open to all. And we also want to acknowledge that Michigan State University and our statewide offices occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. And we're including this land acknowledgement as part of affirming Indigenous sovereignty. Okay, so tonight you're going to hear from me for the introduction. Then we will hear a talk on the benefit of native plants in lakes. Then we'll hear about building natural shorelines, and finally, rain gardens and other features in your lawn and around your house. So that's the order of talks for tonight. First, we like to start with a couple questions just to get you thinking about harmful algal blooms or HABs again. So true or false, and you should be able to enter these in the chat. An algal bloom occurs when algae grow rapidly and are visible without a microscope. All right, yep, I see we got some true answers, and that is correct. So an algal bloom is when algae are visible without a microscope, like this green algae or filamentous algae you can see in this picture here. All right, here's another one for you. All harmful algal blooms in Michigan are caused by or originate from cyanobacteria. True or false? Got a little bit more both sides on this one, and this can be a little tricky depending on which parts you're thinking of, but generally this is true. So because we have fresh water in Michigan, only certain types of algae can cause harmful algal blooms, and in Michigan, that is typically cyanobacteria that cause those blooms. Now, if you're somewhere else, like in Florida, that's not the case. You would have there'd be other options for that as well. All right, last question. True or false? This photo shows a lake that is unhealthy. All right. Looks like everyone's got this one pretty well. This is false. Yes. So it seems that you're aware, or some of you are anyway, a lake that has a lot of plants and aquatic life in it does not mean that it's unhealthy. It just means that it does have plants in it. And we'll be hearing a lot more about those plants and different types of plants during tonight's webinar. So looking forward to learning more about that. And I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. That's Eric Elgin from MSU Extension.
Thank you very much. Well, yeah, what a fun beginning to look at the polls and those questions. I am grateful to be here tonight. It's always fun to be part of a webinar that's called The Power of Plants. And so I'm going to get things started. Again, my name is Eric Elgin. I'm an aquatic ecologist with Michigan State University Extension. I do a lot of work in the conservation of our inland lakes. And tonight I'm going to talk about one of my passions, which are aquatic plants. Note in here, I say my title is Life in the Weeds. And I have weeds in quotes because oftentimes when we see these plants in the water, the first thing we say is, oh, look at that seaweed, or gross, it's touching me while I swim. But by the end of my 15 minutes here, I hope to show you that these weeds in the water have many benefits that structure a lot of what we enjoy in our inland lakes. So what do I mean for aquatic plants in my presentation? So what I'm referring to here are submersed aquatic plants. So here's a cross section of a typical deep lake, a lake over 30 feet deep, let's say. As you all are probably familiar, is that we see a lot of plants in the shallow areas. And that's because what's happening is as sunlight comes down into a lake, it starts to get reflected, absorbed, and so on. And so there's an extent where the light goes away. There's not enough light for photosynthesis. And so that area where there is enough light, we call the photic zone. So there's enough light for photosynthesis to occur. When that photic zone intersects and touches the bottom of the lake, rooted aquatic plants can grow because sunlight is reaching the bottom sediments. And we call that area the littoral zone. And so my presentation is going to be focusing on this area of the lake called the littoral zone. So this is a typical deep water lake, but the more common lake type around the world is actually a shallow lake. And shallow lakes, oftentimes the photic zone is found that goes all the way to the bottom of the lake throughout pretty much the entire basin of the lake. And so in these lakes, you get even more aquatic plants, and then therefore many of the things that plants do are magnified in these shallower systems. And what is a shallow lake? If the mean depth is under 15 feet or so, that's pretty much what that's how we can define a shallow lake. And this area of a lake is truly an underwater forest. It has incredible diversity. It has towering pondweed species that are canopy formers that can grow many feet up into the water column. They have more low-growing carpet type species and species in between. I just put in a few little tidbits here. People may be familiar with the word milfoil, and oftentimes it's seen as a negative, mainly because there is a species of milfoil called Eurasian water milfoil that is invasive and non-native. It's non-native and causes impacts on our lake, so it's invasive. But there are 6 other native milfoil species in Michigan. We have awesome carnivorous submersed plants. So these are plants that are under the water, but have these little bladders where a little invertebrate swims by and it opens and closes and slowly dissolves it and eats it. So it's a really cool glimpse. I really encourage any of you to put on a snorkel mask and take a swim through the underwater forest, or a hike through the underwater forest. It's not just that they have really cool diversity and they're neat amongst themselves, they also provide incredible value to fish and other wildlife, all sorts of different species. For example, for fish, some fish might spawn on them. Some fish might, when they hatch from their eggs, those little baby fish might swim amongst the aquatic plants as a refuge from getting eaten. Whereas some will actually, adult fish will, like northern pike, will utilize it for hunting, where they will wiggle into plant beds, reaching out to grab their prey. There's also other ways that plants provide wonderful habitat, is that they allow for certain types of attached algae to grow on these plants. And because of that, you get a tremendous amount of invertebrates that eat that algae on the surface of the plants. And then that is a linkage into the broader food web of the lake. So they're just incredibly important for habitat for a variety of organisms in a lake. But I'm going to shift my presentation now to talk more about their structuring role in providing good water clarity and water quality. And so there's a few bullet points here where aquatic plants have a host of mechanisms that they do that improve water clarity, from reducing sediment resuspension, increasing sedimentation, reducing shoreline erosion, competing with those nutrients that are found in the water column, shading out and creating areas where they grow best. They also can produce chemicals that go up into the water and inhibit the growth of algae. And largely, why would that be the case? Is they're in competition with algae for light and nutrients. And because phytoplankton, the microscopic algae that can float into the water, they can be up and about and shade out the aquatic plants. And so these aquatic plants and algae are in competition with one another for those things. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit about how aquatic plants are a refuge for zooplankton, and specifically certain zooplankton that are filter feeders that help reduce algae in the water column. So I'm going to dive into these quick. So what do I mean by sediment resuspension and sedimentation? So imagine we're looking at a lake. So here's the surface of a lake. Here's the bottom in the lake bed here. When wind is moving across the surface of the lake, there is a transfer of energy of that wind into the water column. And if it's in shallow area and there's a big enough wind, that energy can touch the bottom of the lake. When it does that, it can cause sediment resuspension. So now sediment is resuspended up into the water column, which in that is inherently reducing water clarity. But then also those sediment particles, what's oftentimes attached to those sediment particles is phosphorus. And phosphorus is a key nutrient to algae and plant growth. And when it's bound to sediment, it's not utilized by those algae. But now when that sediment particle gets released or gets resuspended up into the water column, it releases from the sediment. The phosphorus releases from the sediment and is now available for use by algae, which is reducing water clarity further. Now, I'm going to keep this same graph, but we're going to look at it when there's aquatic plants present. So now we have waves going across, but instead of that wave energy reaching the bottom of the lake, what we're seeing here is that the aquatic plants are absorbing that wave energy, buffering the sediment, kind of carpeting it, keeping it in place. And so now there's not enough wind energy reaching the lake bed. And so now sediment resuspension is very minimal. And so you're not getting that release of particles up into the water column, and you're not getting as much phosphorus release either. And not only is it reducing sediment resuspension, it's also causing this wave energy because it absorbs some of that wave energy. It creates zones of lower energy. So now if there is particles and algae, clay particles, organic particles floating in the water column, it actually, if it goes into a plant bed, it can go into these kind of zones of low energy and particles start to fall out. And you can see this in big lakes where there's big aquatic plant beds. It might be kind of turbid and cloudy out in the middle and off to the side. But then when you get into these large plant beds, it can clear up considerably because all these particles are falling down into the plant bed. And so now it's reducing sediment resuspension and increasing sedimentation, which both mechanisms improve water clarity in lakes. There's a cool study that looked at this. And so what we see here is on a lake where there was no plants, as wind speed increases, we see more phosphorus releasing into the water column. When we have plants that are present throughout this lake, even though there's higher wind, there's not as much, the phosphorus really doesn't change. And so we're seeing that effect of keeping resuspension down. Another mechanism that we look at is nutrient competition. So nitrogen and phosphorus and other nutrients are really important for both phytoplankton algae and aquatic plants. And so we oftentimes will see in these very dense plant beds, well, these plants can absorb and utilize and then hold on to these nutrients throughout the growing season. Plant beds can also create chemical conditions that actually can release nitrogen from the water column and up into the air as N2 gas. And so an experiment was done among many different projects where they looked at algae growth here, and then they looked at just looking at a bottle that had nutrients and algae, and this is called a control. They put in plastic plants to see if it was all about structure, and then they added Chara, which is a common aquatic plant in Michigan. Myriophyllum is a milfoil, and Elodea is called waterweed. And what we see here is in all three circumstances when aquatic plants are present, we have less algal growth. And so what they were showing here is that, without any sediment resuspension or anything like that, aquatic plants were inhibiting the growth of algae. And when they studied it further, it was through absorbing nutrients and holding it. And then also they were seeing a little bit of evidence where chemicals were being released into the water column, inhibiting the growth, and that's called allelopathy. And then my final mechanism I wanted to talk about was that aquatic plants are a daytime refuge for filter feeding zooplankton. So these critters over here filter feed the water and eat a bunch of algae, but they also are eaten by fish. And so to stay away from fish during the day, they swim into the aquatic plants as a refuge. They filter feed during the day, creating clear conditions, But then when night comes, they go back into the open water and filter feed there as well. And so we're seeing this cool effect where the food web is now affected with aquatic plants through the zooplankton, which is pretty incredible. And so all of these mechanisms, plus more, are working at the same time in our lakes. And so when we see an abundance of aquatic plants, especially in shallow lakes, we are having these clear water conditions. But if plants are reduced in any into a certain threshold, the lake can flip and become more algae dominated and very cloudy and turbid. And this is a challenge because when we live on lakes, oftentimes we reduce the aquatic plant abundance and biomass in that littoral zone. And oftentimes it's because of this perception that weeds are nuisance. There are weeds in the water and we don't like them. And because of this perceived nuisance, plants are removed. And we see this in the different studies around where they look at developed shorelines and undeveloped shorelines. And what we find is aquatic plants are reduced when it's developed. And as you can see, that can impact many things in the lake. It's not just reduction of plants, it's now having cascading impacts to water clarity, quality, and habitat. And so to finish my presentation, it's to note that these aquatic plants, most of them are not weeds. Many of them are wonderful. They're cool in their own right, but they also do many wonderful things that benefit wildlife, fish, other organisms, and the water quality of our lakes. So thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Eric. That was a really excellent introduction into why plants are such a valuable and important part of our aquatic habitats. We've got a question about milfoil. How do you know how to identify the invasive kind of milfoil?
Good question. I'll give it in rapid fire, and then when I'm done talking, I can put some information in the chat. But if you have a submersed plant, most of the plant is below the water. You pull it up out of the water, and the leaves look like little feathers, or a little fern or a kid's Christmas tree. You're likely holding on to a milfoil. So it could be one of the 8 species of milfoil. Then note that all of those leaves are in whorls around the stem. Once you see that, count those little appendages on one of the leaves. If there's more than 12 on one side, you're holding on to Eurasian water milfoil, which is the invasive one. And I can give now additional information on the native species as well once I'm done talking.
Thank you. For folks who are looking to plant some aquatic plants, maybe this is a question that some of our future speakers will be talking about. How easy or effective is it to add aquatic plants to the bottom of a lake without using a core log or like a medium to plant them into?
Yeah, so this is actually a big question in the restoration world right now. It's very difficult to find aquatic plants in the native plant nursery world. So many native plant nurseries do not have submersed plants. A handful do. And so we are doing experiments right now where we're looking at what is the easiest way and what are different ways that we can promote aquatic plant growth. And so there are ways where you create a little burrito out of burlap, which will decompose, and you put some stone in it, and you put in an aquatic plant, tie it around with jute string, and then you can drop it into your area where you're trying to restore. You can actually plug it directly in, and also sometimes you might need to use a wooden staple to get it grounded into the water. But there's a whole lot of other nuance. If that person wants more information, we're about to publish a study. I have a report that I could pass along to you because there's multiple other things you need to consider, like are there common carp in the lake and will they just eat all of the seedlings you just planted? So there's just different techniques to keep those out until the plants kind of take root and can handle that pressure.
Excellent. Couple other questions. Folks are wondering about the balance of types of plant species. We've got, native and invasive plant species. Both are plants. Are the invasive plants still serving a role rather than having no plants at all? And what happens when the plants die? Is it better to remove them or to let them decompose in the water?
Well, there's a whole lot there. I'll try to answer as many here as possible and quickly because those are good questions. So um, there are barely any invasive species in Michigan. There's not that many plants, that is, aquatic plants, submersed plants. And so there's well over 150 native submersed plants, floating in submersed plants, whereas there's very few of them are invasive. And so learning about that is great. Learning about that. I'm just trying to be quick here. Learning about what species are present makes it a lot of fun and you can enjoy your lake a lot more as you drive around like, oh wow, there's large leaf pondweed and there's that plant called Cara Eric mentioned on the presentation. And so that's the one part I wanted to mention. The last question was about removing those plants. So aquatic plants are part of the aquatic ecosystem. And so there's many, many connections when they're alive and when they are dying and decomposing. So when they are dying and decomposing, there are tons of different organisms that utilize those plants for food and eating and stuff like that. And so, no, we do not recommend removing the plants as they die and senesce in the water. That is just part of the system that lake has been experiencing for 10,000 years. And then, yes, invasive aquatic plants also provide many of those mechanisms I just mentioned there. Some lakes that are in really poor condition, sometimes an invasive plant is one of the only plants that grows there. And those plants are providing those habitat services, those water clarity services, just like a native plant would do. There are some things that might be missing in there, but yes, if your lake does not have a lot of diversity and you are doing some plant management, consider you don't have to remove all invasive plants in all circumstances. And so that would be a discussion with your lake community and lake management company. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is also Eric, but Eric Calabro from Eagle.
So my name is Eric Calabro. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. I'm the Inland Lakes Policy Analyst for our resource permitting program. So we do all of the permitting and compliance for construction-based activities wherever land meets water around the state. And today I'm really excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is building natural shorelines and how can we work with our existing landscapes to improve our lakes. Many of our lakes are, especially in southern Michigan, are more developed, and we've seen kind of a decline in our resources. And how can we make these lakes as good as they can be? So Eric covered a lot of these points really well. So I'm going to kind of breeze through some of these slides, but I'm just kind of laying a foundation of natural shorelines around our lakes, and native plants provide important functions and values. So Eric mentioned, sediment stabilization and sedimentation and mitigating shoreline erosion and a lot of these functions. But we also value natural shorelines as well for because they support a lot of the things that people like fishing and snorkeling and swimming and things along those lines. But what we're seeing is, I guess what we have seen over time is a change in our lakes. So, this is a typical undeveloped northern Michigan lake where we have beautiful wetland shorelines, vegetated, woody structure in the water, floating plants, natural shorelines. And what we've seen over time is that lakes that look like this, providing good functions and values, get transformed into lakes that look like this, where we've lost those beautiful wetland shorelines that are providing all those benefits. They've been replaced with seawalls and hardened shorelines and mowed lawns to the water's edge, and a heavily used landscape with boats and docks and runoff from the street and things like that. And these more developed systems have less woody structure and less vegetation cover and density than what our undeveloped shorelines do. And shoreline hardening specifically, when we see it on more of a lake-wide scale, has a large amount of issues associated with it, with the hard reflection of waves opposed to the gradual dampening of waves that we see with naturally sloped shorelines. So with that hard reflection of wave energy, we can get scouring of the lake bottom, erosion of neighboring properties, sediment suspension, like what Eric was discussing, where those waves are bouncing off these hardened structures, and because there's really no submersed plants or near shore plants anymore, that sediment is getting stirred up. We lose the habitat complexity, obviously as a barrier for animal movement like turtles and things like that with hardened shorelines. And we often see increased lake energy because these waves are bouncing off all of the walls around the lake. So this is an example of this. This is the North Bay of Portage Lake in Livingston County, and this is an image from 1938. So you can see in this image the different textures of the vegetation on the ground. So you can kind of tell by the texture here, all of this is wetland. This area here is also wetland. We have some nice forested areas around. And what we've done over time to many of our lakes is transform them into this, where we have much more heavy usage. We see elimination of these wetlands, docks placed everywhere. And this didn't happen overnight, right? This was small incremental impacts over this, 80-year or so period. And what kind of makes me step back a little bit is that, this is just one person's lifetime, from 1938 here, within 2020 to 2022, there are people around this lake that remember it in its previous state. So I think it really underlines the point of conserving small habitat fragments and the merits of that. So across Michigan, we've seen the impacts of the shoreline hardening, and there have been a lot of projects, especially over the last 10, 15 years, that have shown less impactful alternatives are available. And it's really about finding a balance. We're not trying to completely change people's aesthetic of what they want their properties to look like, or stop projects from happening or anything like that. It's just we just need to try to do things a little bit better. And there's a lot more examples out there on the landscape now in Michigan to allow us to do that. And we've learned a lot about these techniques over the years. So how do we do it? So how do we build a natural shoreline? So we start by trying to mimic what we see successful, stable shorelines looking like in nature. So how do we mimic what we see in nature? What are qualities of a natural shoreline that we see on an undeveloped lake? So the foundation of this is shallow shoreline slopes that can support plants. Oftentimes we see slopes on a 20-foot vertical to one horizontal slope. But even when we're restoring shorelines, we really try and go for a one on four slope, for example. We also see tiers of vegetation, so grasses, flowers, shrubs, trees, aquatic plants, all tying together that shoreline. We see plants in the water. Wetlands are a tremendously valuable piece of inland lakes and lake ecology. And then also woody structure in the water. If you go to any undeveloped lake, you will see trees in the water, and they perform a lot of important functions. So the bottom lines here really are slope and the plants are central to the designing of natural shorelines. And it's really the plants that are protecting the shoreline here over time. how do we create a healthier lake environment with these kind of general points in mind? So I'm going to go through some project examples now, and I split this next part of the talk up into two pieces. So the first piece is properties that are in need of shoreline protection, like this one. This is just mowed lawn to the water's edge. And then, what can people do that have existing properties with seawalls? It can be very expensive to remove a seawall, for example. So how can we make some small steps in properties that have existing shoreline hardening? So I'm going to start with properties that are in need of shoreline protection. So these are two main designs that we have that I see a lot around the state, where we have a coconut fiber log. And I guess I'll step back for a moment. There's a lower energy design and a higher energy design that are commonly utilized. So, depending on the wave energy, the boating activity, and things like that, different techniques can be used to facilitate native plant establishment. And that's what these designs are really all about. So we're using a coir log just to protect young plants as they're becoming established. And this coir log will eventually degrade over time. And then it will be the plants that are tying the shoreline together. And over time, you will never even know that a coir log was placed there. And then same thing with rock revetments. And in higher energy environments, a very low slope, this 1-on-4 slope is used just to protect the plants. And then the plants over time will slowly move out over the rock and stabilize the shoreline. So we do have at Eagle some ways to learn if your shoreline is a higher energy shoreline. But here's a general example of what this looks like. So this is an eroded, a little bit of erosion on this shoreline. And I'm going to kind of go through time here a little bit. So this is the before pictures. And then here is shortly after a project was installed. And this is a higher energy project. So, and I want you to keep an eye on, here's the coir log. And I put yellow arrows just to orient you in the future pictures of where these locations are. So, and this is an arrow pointing at these two trees and an arrow pointing at the coir log. So here is a year or two into this project. And then a couple following years. So here's that arrow at that same tree. He lost his buddy along the way. And then I took this picture back in 2022, where you can see, you can't even really see the rock anymore. The vegetation is completely moved out right to the shoreline. And here's the arrow, and then there's that tree. So this is the general idea of what we're going for. This is another picture of a lower energy design where, this person did this project. I was talking with this person on their shoreline a few years ago, and he did this project with his son in a weekend on a relatively lower energy shoreline, staking in the coir logs. He chose 5 workhorse plant species, like irises, Canada anemone, and some others, and it shored up his shoreline. On Eagle's shoreline protection website, there's a ton of examples, and I'm constantly trying to put up more and more as I visit more projects around the state of shorelines that have installed these bioengineering practices. And there's lots of different examples. So this is a steeper shoreline on a slope where they created a natural shoreline. Lower energy sites, higher energy sites. This is on Torch Lake, this image here, where they were able to naturalize the shoreline in a huge energy environment. Shorelines in higher energy environments that also use woody structure and flowers, grasses. There's just a variety of different aesthetics for folks who want a more manicured look to a little bit more wild look. So you guys can explore that story map. In that story map, it gives a bunch of information about each project as well, like how much the project cost, what's the energy level, who did the work, what plants they used, what materials, and things like that. So with projects that are on existing properties with seawalls, for example, like this property, there's a few things you could do. So the first thing, I guess, I would suggest is, if it's possible, rip that sucker out of there. that may be not possible in certain circumstances, but that would definitely be the best thing to do. And here's a few ways to do that. So this is a concrete wall removal, and you can see the excavator in there was peeling back the shoreline. So with properties that have seawalls like this, we remove the wall and peel this shoreline back to create that slope, like I mentioned in the earlier slides. And this is a couple pictures of some folks doing that. That might be Eric Elgin on that excavator. I don't know. This is a picture of the finished project where you can see the hard reflection of waves on the seawall, and then the dissipation of waves here, and how some of the plants have begun moving out onto this revetment. So some other options, if you don't have the capacity to remove seawalls, is just trying to develop some small native gardens behind your existing shoreline structure. So that's what these pictures are showing. There's lots of ways to promote infiltration right behind your seawall, so we don't have a lot of that runoff coming in directly from the lake. So check out our shoreline protection website. There's a ton of information on there, example plans, fact sheets, and also please visit the Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership. They have plant lists, other examples, and a lot of resources on their website as well. So, and I can take any questions.
Thank you so much, Eric. We actually have a question that will get to the topic that we flashed through right at the end. For someone who wants to retain the seawall, what does it look like to kind of build out a garden in front of that? Can they add rocks and plant plants right onto the rocks?
In certain circumstances you could. I have seen, so one of the projects on the story map was somebody who had removed their concrete wall and then graded that property back, and it was in a lower energy environment, and they used it was kind of like a half retaining wall, half revetment behind it, made out of cobble, and then in front of it they actually planted bulrushes and some aquatic plants to create like a little emergent marsh, like right in front of this kind of steep riprap or sloped wall kind of thing, and it turned out awesome. So that was one of the pictures I kind of flashed by at the end there, but that's a possibility. Yeah, and especially planting behind, I feel like that's a really easy achievable way to have a little bit more functional lift on your property, where you can get rid of some of the turf grass behind your wall and then add in a native planted buffer zone.
Great. We are wondering where you can buy the materials for a project like this, like the coconut fiber logs. Are those available at the average, like, gardening center?
I wouldn't recommend going to an average gardening center. If you're interested in some of the materials, I have a list of suppliers that we can send you. Actually, and I think there's also a list of suppliers on the Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership's website as well. So there's some core log, erosion control fabric, and kind of material suppliers like that on that website, as well as native plant suppliers too.
Are there classes where folks can get practice putting up shorelines, and kind of at the same time, are there opportunities to volunteer for shoreline restoration?
Totally. Yeah, we're actually, Eric Elgin and I are part of an instructor team that are doing some classes tomorrow and the next day. So through the Michigan Natural Shoreline Partnership again, they do yearly trainings on how to install natural shorelines, plants, permitting, everything associated with restoring a lake shoreline. So there's 2 days of classroom education, and then there's a field day where we actually are hands-on installing shorelines and creating demonstration projects. So there's opportunities for that, and we can send you some more information on those classes as well. So
is anyone available to come to speak to a neighborhood in Commerce Township about shoreline buffer gardens? And I guess to expand that beyond Commerce Township, are folks from Eagle or from MSU Extension available to kind of do those presentations to neighborhoods?
I'd be happy to. Yeah. I travel around and do presentations all over the state, so feel free to reach out, and if I'm available, I'd love to stop by.
Awesome.
All right, thanks so much, Eric. That was awesome. And I love seeing all the questions that everyone has and wanting to get involved in the chat, which is great. And yes, our last talk tonight is Susan Bryan from Washtenaw County, and she's going to be talking about rain gardens and other things you can do in your yard. So take it away, Susan.
Thanks so much. I just to follow up on what Eric Calabro was talking about, and I was fascinated by his presentation. I feel like I want to see the end, but we have those 2 aquatic planting work days, and Eric Elgin didn't emphasize how cutting edge that practice is of wrapping up the aquatic plant in a little piece of burlap with a stone, and then people just toss it into the water, and you try to toss it into the water where it's not too deep. And it worked beautifully. People had a great time. And if anyone wants to come to our volunteer day, learn how to do it, and then do it at your lake, find out where people got the plants. I think it was Wild Type where we bought the plants, and then do it at your lake. You could totally do that. We'd love to spread the word because it is really a cutting edge process. All right, I'll share my screen. We'll talk about rain gardens. Eric and Eric had beautiful photos of lakes, and I will also have some beautiful photos of lakes. This is from Eric Calabro's story map. He probably just added this photo, and I was just like, oh, living the dream on a lake. So beautiful, especially in the wintertime when you can just see the water. I love it. Today was beautiful, but on a lake, every day is beautiful. And spring is coming. So if you're a gardener, you're thinking about, what could you plant? Nugget and her husband here this is at one of our native plant sales that we host, and they're getting ready for spring and thinking about everything they can plant. And why not plant a rain garden? A rain garden can be just as beautiful as any other flower bed that you have on your property. It can really make things look gorgeous. And a rain garden takes that water from your house and soaks it into the ground. That's what makes it a rain garden. But before that happens, I have to talk about a lot of disgusting things. Eric and Eric had beautiful photos of lakes, but no, this is my boss taking a photo of the gross stuff on the ground when it snows and it turns into slush and it's black, all that gross stuff. Where does it go? Where does it go? Well, the snow melts, and this is me in my free time taking photos of what is left after the snow melts. This is sediment, is what it's known in scientific circles. And then it rains. And then where does it go? All the disgusting things that are on, especially a hard surface like concrete or your roof or the street, all those things, all those gross, or even grass, really. Water really sort of just washes off of grass. It washes all this into, brace yourself. This is actually Lake Michigan, so it's not an inland lake. It's not small. The Grand River has a huge area that it drains into Lake Michigan, but on a small scale, this happens everywhere. So even if like the gravel road or the gravel driveway drains into the lake, sediment gets into the lake. And that's not what we want. We do not want that. This non-point source pollution is what it's called, is the biggest source of pollution in our lakes. Now, and you can see it from space. Yuck! Ew! Okay, but no, we will not let this happen. We will build rain gardens, and we will not let pollution get into our lakes. And people are really doing it. This is Washtenaw County and a little bit of Livingston County. But if you zoom out on this map, and I'm going to show you this map in a little bit, you will see how many people have built rain gardens. I only keep track in Southeast Michigan, but I'm sure people are doing it all over. And I'll put a link. If you have a rain garden and you want to add it to the map, you really should, because you can scroll around and your neighbors can scroll around and be like, oh, look at that pretty garden. Maybe I should plant a rain garden. Okay, so back to the what is a rain garden? So the reason why a rain garden works is instead of putting, I'm not sure you can see my cursor, but instead of the water from the roof going down the driveway, taking all the oils from the car and the heavy metals from the brake pads and blah, 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 into the road, into the gutter, and then into a pipe, into the river or the lake, or it could be a ditch. In the country, it's often a ditch that goes right into the lake. Instead of doing that, having it go into your yard and into a shallow garden that has plants. And it could be a tree, could be a shrub. Here it's flowers, could be any of those things. And that's what helps the water slow down and soak into the ground. And that's what we're looking for. That's the gold standard, is water soaking into the ground. That's what nature did before we started paving paradise. And that's what we want to get back to. And it's okay, like a rain garden, it's not only just soaking in what the rain that falls on it, it's soaking in so much from the roof, and it's fine. It can do that double duty, triple duty. I mean, like there's a limit, but it can do that double duty and it will function correctly. So let's look at some rain gardens. I collected some of the rain gardens that are on my map, on the Rainscaping map. This is Kay Wilson and her husband, Dan Barry, and they're on Half Moon Lake, which is in Southeast Michigan. Beautiful lake. He's an architect, so this is maybe slightly more fancy than your typical rain garden. You can see the corrugated metal on the left, and that is a basin where this is where this architecture gets fancy. There's a scupper, which is on the roof of the garage, which shoots like the water basically like tumbles down off the scupper into this basin, and then the basin overflows into the rain garden. So it's super fancy. Anyway, you don't need that part. All you need is the garden itself. And the water flows into this garden and it soaks into the ground and it feeds, this is the cool part, feeds the groundwater that then slowly, slowly, slowly feeds the lake. By the time it gets there, it is cold, it is clean, it is clear, and it's the way nature used to do it. Okay, so here's how he designed it. And I teach the Master Rain Gardener class, and we teach you how to do this whole process, like how to design it yourself so that it's beautiful the way you want it. This is his drawing. You can see there's like steps going from the house to the garage. That garden, shade garden, that's going to be the rain garden. On the left is before, and it's, it's okay, but there's a lot of utilities there and things like that. On the right is he's digging it out himself, actually. And then there it is, all planted, all finished, all done. Let's visit another rain garden. Remember where this rain garden is. I might circle back. After I teach you, I'm going to teach you the rules of rain gardens. He broke one, and I want you to think about which one it was. So, as it turns out, it's okay because he, made sure it was okay. But which rule did he break? All right. So, another rain garden. Interesting that Eric Calabro showed Portage Lake. This is also Portage Lake, same lake. This is the south side. And Scarlett Bennett planted a beautiful rain garden quite a while ago. It's still functioning, still a beautiful garden. This is the first year actually of that garden. And she put in, are a bunch of native perennials in there, but she also put in annuals. Why not? Let's make it fun. Let's make it beautiful. Then, and one of the reasons she put in her garden is she was having a lot of flooding in her yard, as did her neighbors. Like the whole neighborhood, the yard would be a few inches of water. So this is a couple of years later, the water's still pooling, but those plants are starting to mature. They're starting to get bigger. And also she planted more perennials instead of just annuals. So it starts to function better. And so this water starts to soak in faster and faster. This is a few years later. The garden would fill up. 2 hours later, soaked in. Because it functioned so well. It just unlike architecture or engineering, when you plant a rain garden, it gets better and better and functions better over time. So the older the rain garden is, the better. Why? Well, it's the job of a plant to soak in that water. The native plants, especially, are growing their deep roots, letting the water soak in, and creating all those little holes that even in the wintertime lets the water soak in. And then they're also evapotranspiring water into the atmosphere. So doing a really good job. You can see on the right, there's Kentucky bluegrass. So that's why lawns don't soak in water very well. It's not their fault. It's just that their roots are too short. And we use this photo actually of Scarlett's rain garden on Portage Lake on our postcards. Like, it's so beautiful. Also, a rain garden does not have to be big. I just want to point out Terry Henning's rain garden. All the other landscaping is just normal landscaping. No rain garden is happening, except for that little edge around her tree bed. That's the rain garden. That's what's capturing the water. So if you didn't put if you didn't put up a like rain garden sign, you wouldn't know. It's just landscaping. Here's Graciela Rubaclava showing her rain garden. It's the paisley shaped garden in front of her house. The rest is foundation plantings, not rain gardens. This is the rain garden. So it can be beautiful. It can be a gorgeous shape. It can be small. It can reflect your taste. Now that I know of, there are more than 2,000 rain gardens in Michigan, and we're really proud of them. I superimposed this number on the Saline District Library rain garden because it was looking so beautiful, and it's taken care of by 2 volunteers actually, and they're just doing a lovely job. What does a rain garden do, and how does it function? And let's dig a little deeper here. Okay, so it's a bed that instead of being a raised bed, it's a lowered bed, and it lets the water puddle there. Often it solves other problems. I mean, there's this big environmental problem that it is a powerhouse. It's the gold standard. It does a great job, but it can also solve other drainage issues. For instance, this is EMU's, Eastern Michigan University's housing, one of their family housing complexes, and this is a courtyard. So there's buildings on all 4 sides, and the lawnmowers would always get stuck in here because the downspouts put the water right here in the courtyard. There's nowhere else for it to go. But by putting rain gardens, the water goes in the rain garden. The lawn stays high and dry. The mowers can mow. Everyone's happy. Can really help with that sort of thing. Also, it attracts birds and butterflies. All these photos are taken by master rain gardeners of wonderful habitat that they have and animals and critters that they've seen in their yards. Hummingbirds, just a wonderful thing. That's on cardinal flower, the hummingbird there. And cardinal flower is pretty hard to grow actually outside of a rain garden, but in a rain garden in clay, loves it. Rain garden on clay, cardinal flower. It's a real treat. All you need is to shape that garden, and then you can see the green pipe. You put your downspout into the rain garden, voila, rain garden. And this photo I like because it really shows how you shape the garden so that it catches that water. So without this garden, the water would just flow over the grass to that driveway, down the driveway into the street, into the pipe, to the river. But with the rain garden, it basically just catches like a catcher mitt, like a catcher's mitt. That you can see that the berm there stops the water, slows it down, and then the plants are so happy because they have extra water. I think the berm that he just planted, so that's why they're not growing on the berm as much. But I like the photo because it really shows the berm, so that's nice. Lori Sprague and Dexter, so happy about her rain garden, probably because her teenage sons dug it for her. So, like Tom Sawyer, she's thrilled. But also it captures the water from her driveway, which is harder to do. But she had a long country driveway, and she was able to capture that water right here in her yard before it went into the road ditch. So good job, Lori. It can also, we have this top of mind right now where the ice is on the sidewalk where we're trying, or maybe on our driveway or on our walkway where we're trying to walk and there's ice. And well, how can a rain garden catch that? Well, this is actually my picture of my neighbor's house. The water from that downspout goes into a pipe and then pops out right where the blue arrow is. And the water goes onto the sidewalk. And they're out there all the time chopping that ice. I feel really badly for them, actually, because they don't want anyone to slip. No one slipped in the making of this slide. But if they ever ask my advice, that hedge could be a rain garden hedge. And then they wouldn't have as much water on their sidewalk, and they wouldn't have to be out there chopping ice as often. So it can often solve other problems. Or water in the basement. This is the classic, where in this yard, the water or the land was sloped towards the house. That's not the way it should be. Masonry and water should never mix. But that's the way the ground was sloped. So what to do? This involves a lot of earth moving, but they re-sculpted the land so that the land slopes away from the house. And the water goes to the rain garden and then soaks in. So here it is, just baby, just planted. And then it grows up and the tree is bigger and the blue lobelia is blooming. It can be really beautiful and no more water in their basement. By the way, while I'm talking about rain gardens, think of your hardest rain garden question, like the thing that you've always wondered about rain gardens, because I love the hard ones. You should bring those hard questions. Okay, so here's another one where the water was getting on the sidewalk, which was annoying this couple. And they already had trenched in their downspouts, so it went to a pop-up in their yard. That's the green device there. And the water would overflow and go onto the sidewalk and create ice. They were annoyed. But it doesn't take that big of a rain garden to solve that problem. Here's the rain garden. The water goes into the rain garden. Basically, the pop-up is exactly the same spot, but the water goes into the garden, soaks in, and doesn't go to the sidewalk. So this is just a glamour shot here of rain garden. So build a beautiful one. I mean, the garden should be beautiful, right? Why not make yourself happy? Ooh, here's a good one. So this master rain gardener, these were not built by me. These are all built by cool people like you who build rain gardens, and they have the most creative ideas. So this gentleman built the rain garden at his church, and so it captures the water from the parking lot. So it's a pretty big parking lot. It's a church, and then the strip rain garden takes that water and soaks it in. Because this was built before we had stormwater regulations. So the stormwater from this parking lot was just, not being treated at all. It's just not going to a detention basin, just going straight to our stormwater system. How can you learn more? Well, you can always take the Master Rain Gardener class, but we also have a Master Rain Gardener Facebook group. It's called Master Rain Gardener in Facebook. And if you join, you can ask questions, you can take pictures of your yard and say, where should I put it? Do all those sorts of things. And the alumni, the Master Rain Gardener alumni there will answer your questions. They're really very nice. It's a nice little friendly corner of the internet. I love, so this is just, to broaden your mind. Actually, are there any questions, like hard questions about rain gardens? Can I ask, Geneva?
Well, we've got a question about salt from water softener backwashing, and I know that salt from road wash off is also a big problem, so speak on that.
That's a good one. I like it. Okay. So salt from a water softener or salt from the road, those are big problems, because if it's too salty, then especially our native plants don't like it as much. There are more salt tolerant plants. And then you can also start getting into plants that grow on the ocean shorelines, and they're pretty salt tolerant. But before you go there, look at the place where the water softener outlets and just look, is anything growing? Are there weeds? If weeds will grow there, native plants will grow there. You just have to pick the right ones. But if nothing grows there, it is a dead zone. Probably a rain garden won't work. But that's a good question, and I'm glad you're bringing it. More hard questions, people, bring them.
We've got a how big is too big and how close to the foundation is too close sort of theme here.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about the foundation. You should be at least 10 feet away from your house foundation, especially from a basement or crawl space. Either one of those. You want to be at least 10 feet away. And what was the first part of the question?
Is there a point where a rain garden is sort of too big and you want to scale it down for manageability?
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to build a garden that's too so big that you can't manage it, that you can't weed it. It's always best to start small. Even a small rain garden will be doing good, and it will capture maybe a quarter, maybe half of the rainfalls. That's good. That's great. And also, if it looks great, your neighbors are more likely to do it too. So you're doing good in the world. That's all good. Then, when you have more time, if you want to make it bigger, that's a great way to approach it. There's also, and we teach this in the Master Rain Gardener class, generally we teach that the garden should be about 20% of the area of the roof or the driveway or whatever's draining to this rain garden. That will capture about 85% of the rainfall. So, but you could capture more, you could capture less. Like it's kind of a flexible guideline. So only bite off what you can chew, I would say.
And
All right,
speaking from experience with my rain garden, I broke two rules. Mine is a little too small and it's very close to my foundation, but because I'm on a slab and I have no basement, the hydrology works there. So I think there's a lot of ways to tailor and customize and sort of feel out the rules. And with advice from Susan and the other master rain gardeners, you can make sure that you've got a solution that works for your space. Could you give us some like top 3 or 5 powerhouse plants? Like they're versatile, they can work well in multiple kinds of rain gardens, or like they're a go-to favorite.
Yes, and let me show some photos just because rattling off some names doesn't necessarily mean a lot to people. Betsy Lindsay built her rain garden from her garage. And you can see it's pretty close to that garage. Is she following the 10-foot rule? Let's look. Well, just like Geneva said, her garage doesn't have a basement, so she can be a little closer. It's okay. All right, let's look at her rain garden. That's the next spring. It filled with water. She panicked. She sends me this photo. It's okay. That's what should happen in a rain garden. You can even see the little blue flag iris are poking up already. They're actually very happy. And that's one of the powerhouse plants, I would say. And there it is. It's not blooming right there, but blue flag iris, Iris virginica, is a great rain garden plant. Oh, it is blooming. Wait, there's one little cute little bloom right there. Iris virginica is a great rain garden plant. I would say it's number 1. It is the most reliable rain garden plant in our palette. Let's see. Ooh, and there's Scarlett Bennett right there with her rain garden. Your rain garden could be Geneva. Is your rain garden on my map?
It sure is, although it's had a couple years to grow now, so I'll have to take some fresh pictures this summer.
Oh yeah, send them to me and I'll update. Nice. Let's see if we can talk about more plants here. Okay, oh, it's still doing that. That's weird. My computer's doing weird things. I do have pictures of plants, so I'll circle it back around when we can see them because it's a little bit more. But the number 1 plant is definitely Iris virginica, blue flag iris. Amazing plant. Looks great. 3 seasons out of the year. Will grow in really, really dry, super wet. I see it growing on the edge of the Huron River. Great, great plant. So rain gardens really take like our old way of thinking is that rainwater, let's just get rid of it. It's a waste product and turning it into something. I mean, of course a garden needs water. It's good for the garden. It's good for our plants. Wow. Does that look weird to you like it looks to me? Okay. If you're on a lake though, where do you put this rain garden? So you can see on the left is the car, the house, maybe some lawn. You want some area to run around and have the grandkids play. still on that upland area, that's where you want to put the rain garden because you are protecting your lake from pollution by building a rain garden in between. The rain garden is the powerhouse. It is protecting the lake from any sort of runoff that might be happening from your roof or from like gravel driveways and things like that. The rain garden is there to protect your lake. So that's where you want to put it. And then here are the rules, if you can read them. Number 1 is 10 feet away from the house. There's a lot of other rules here. In general, I would say don't make it too deep. That's the other one. So it should really only be like 3 inches deep, 4 inches deep, no deeper than that. The rest is all good. And we have the Master Rain Gardener Handbook, which has all the rules. But looking at these rules, what is the rule that Kay Wilson and Dan Barry broke on their rain garden next to the lake?
We've got some guesses for too close or not a good overflow option.
Ooh, oh, I like, ooh, someone knows something. So yes, it's too close to the house. What is he thinking? But he's actually an architect, and I think he did, number 1, they don't have a basement there. Number 2, he did some kind of fancy protection with rubber and underground barriers and things like that, which that's not for us non-architects to do. But so yes, too close to the house. And if I'm sure when I discussed it with him, I was like, hey, this is too close to your house. And he had, reasons why it was going to be okay. And it's your yard. You can do what you want. And the second one, not a good overflow. Not a good overflow. Ooh, okay, that's a good one. Let's talk about the overflow. So, a rain garden is going to fill up and it's going to overflow at least 15% of the time. Like if you do it 20% and you're capturing 85% of the rains, that's going to happen on the regular. Every year it's going to do that. So making that overflow into a safe place, that's very important. And it's okay if it goes towards the lake. It's going to go all the way through the grass and, that kind of stuff. Plus, you've already done your work. The rain garden has already done its work. It's okay. But yes, ooh, I like it. Good work, people. So let's talk about both those things when we look at Denise's rain garden here. Denise Held, here's her. She did this garden during the Master Rain Gardener class, did her own design. This is her design. She's digging it, and it has 2 stepped pools. Now we're getting into advanced stuff here. You can see that the water pools here, and then it overflows, and then it pools here. She plants it, some with plants that she already had in her garden that she just transplanted. She bought some plants from a native plant nursery, planted them all, ta-da! And then the rain garden grows. So this is the next spring, looking beautiful. We've got iris, we've got columbine. It's interesting, this garden, now that I think about it, as it evolves, becomes more and more native plants. It's interesting. Here's the next summer, and that's the native penstemon. You can see our prairie dock in the back there, but there's also Asiatic lilies. Don't tell anyone. It's okay. I love this photo because look at how parched that grass is. It's a hot day in the middle of July. The grass is parched and the rain garden looks great. Number 1, because it's adapted to wet, dry, but also any little rain that lands on the roof waters the garden. My lazy gardener heart is happy when I see stuff like that. And then later she ended up building this little wall just to make it look pretty. The garden looks great. All right, so gardens grow. And I only have a little bit of time left. Let me make sure I talk about other things. Like, here's the Master Rain Gardener class, masterraingardener.org. Feel free to take it. It's lovely. We have fun, nice people, good food. We have lots of fun. If you're in the area, I'm from Washtenaw County. If you're in this area, get on our email list. We're going to have rain garden tours. We're going to have plant swaps. It's going to be great. All right, so let's talk about other things you can do besides rain gardens. Notice how I took like 20 minutes for rain gardens, and we're going to have like 5 minutes for all the other stuff because it's not as fun. But that's okay. It's still good. If you are replacing your driveway, that's the moment to think, okay, what permeable surface could I put there instead? And in general, for like a driveway, it's pavers, permeable pavers. And they're made in a way so that the water can go in between them, soak into the ground. There's a gravel layer underneath, and then it soaks in. This works great. Here it is at the University of Michigan. But if you're on clay, if you have clay soil, this does not work. So keep that in mind. But it's a wonderful, you can have all these beautiful patterns, and it really protects your lake. Another way is just to de-pave. All the pavement that's there, remove it. So here's an example of a rain gardener, actually, who ended up putting in a rain garden, but he took up some asphalt. They bought the house and they had a bunch of asphalt there that he didn't really want anyway. So took up that asphalt. I think they rented a jackhammer. It's good times, right? And then planted it. And now they have a space that's beautiful for their family to hang out in. That's a fire pit in the middle. And yeah, just a place for the result is a beautiful backyard for people. Rain barrels, I'm sure you've heard of. I have opinions about rain barrels. I love this connection where when you winterize it, you just take off that hose. See the little green hose that connects the downspout? In the downspout there's like a little cup that will take some of the water, not all the water, but take some of it and put it into the rain barrel. Because the amount of water that falls on your roof will overwhelm any rain barrel. It fills up so quickly. And so having just a little bit of it go to the rain barrel means the rain barrel doesn't overflow as much. I like that better than this connection where all the water goes into the rain barrel and then the rain barrel needs to overflow safely somewhere and they have to manage that. This is not, it still works. It's not as good. Also notice both these people put their rain barrel up, which means that they have water pressure. If they attach a hose or they just want to fill up a watering can with their rain barrel, they can do that. So having it elevated really makes the whole thing. Otherwise, you have to dip water out the top to use it, and that's just a lot more work.
As we're looking for some photos, I just wanted to read out the answer to a question about muskrats. Someone had asked about muskrats moving into naturalized areas, and Eric Calabro responded that, yeah, when you make a habitat, sometimes animals want to use it, which is, both a good thing and it can be a nuisance. So Eric recommended trapping the muskrats if they're causing a lot of damage, and sometimes your local drain commissioner might have a list of trappers that they use. And I also wondered if anyone had thoughts about Canada geese in natural areas. Ooh, I'm going to table that because we've got some plants here. I would rather
Ooh,
learn about
Canada
some
geese,
specific
though.
plants.
No, let's talk Canada geese.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do we do to deter goose activity on lake shores? I see Eric coming back online.
We can plant plants, right? So like geese are grazers. They like, picking at grass and picking at in farm fields and things like that, and they like having long sight lines. So planting plants along the shoreline kind of obstructs those long sight lines, so they feel like, predators may be coming. So having anything other than grass is going to help that. And it also, especially along your shoreline, if you're planting plants, it kind of, geese don't like to hustle through, a dense vegetated area like that either. So that kind of deters them from moving in and out of the water as well.
Always finding compelling reasons to get rid of our lawns and plant more exciting things instead.
Yeah, all of our interests are converging. The gardeners and the anti-geese. Yeah. There's that wild iris looking cute. And the white flower around it, just not to ignore it, is the Canada anemone, which spreads like crazy, which sometimes is great. Sometimes you want that, but sometimes you don't. So that's what it is. Sensitive fern, I think, is also one of the top, I'd say top 5, especially if you have a shade rain garden. It's great. And then there are plants for sun, which I would say my top prairie dock was in Denise Held's garden. It looks like elephant ears. If you think about that house plant with the huge leaves, there's a native plant that looks like that. If you wanted to pretend like you're in Florida, you could plant prairie dock because it has these massive leaves and it's very tropical looking. I think maybe swamp milkweed, the upper right there. Also, it's a host for monarch butterflies. That would be a good one as well. So those are at least top three. We have blue flag iris, sensitive fern, prairie dock, and swamp milkweed. So that's where I'm stopping. That's my top 4.
Then I will say, I think my fifth one to your list would be the purple coneflower, which is my ever favorite. And someone had asked if you can do a rain garden in the shade, and yes, absolutely. You just have to choose your plants a bit strategically.
Yeah, sensitive fern will be your friend. Or if you don't want to pay for plants, get ostrich fern. Your neighbor will give it to you.
So we do have just a couple more minutes. There are people with specific questions like, what can I do for this site? Or how can I find plants to meet these criteria? What are some recommendations for where they might get that kind of specific advice?
Absolutely. In the Master Rain Gardener Handbook, which I can put in the chat, or if you have it at your fingertips, Geneva, you could do it too. We have a plant list, and they are divided by sunlight. So whatever sunlight you have, you can pick from that list. Then I would say cross off the ones that are too tall for you, because I feel like that's what you don't want too tall in a garden if that's not what you want. If you want tall, you want tall. But if you don't want tall, you don't want tall. And then just shop, just, be like, well, I have these 10. Which one do I want to plant? That's how you can pick. And then you plant it, and then nature has other opinions. And then you plant more of what actually survived. That's really what happens. But the Master Rain Gardener Handbook will give you all step by step how to measure, how to create a plan to scale, how to pick those plants. All the things are in there.
Fantastic. Well, we do have some questions that I don't think we're going to get to, just for sake of time. I guess I'll leave it with one about rain barrels. How do you keep a rain barrel clean?
Yeah, there's a lot of maintenance. I feel like there's more maintenance on a rain barrel than there is for a rain garden, actually. Because you do want to put a dunk in there, a mosquito dunk, so that you don't get mosquitoes because there is water sitting there for a period of time. So you want to do that. Once a year, I would dump it out. Like in the winter, you want to disconnect it. So dump the whole thing out and let it, dry out, put it in your garage so it will get totally, totally dry. And that's a good way to clean it. I don't think it needs to be any cleaner than that. If you are getting like leaves and stuff in there, make sure you have a nice screen on top so that it doesn't get all gunky in there.
Thank you. I can vouch having a screen on top is really, really helpful.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Susan. Thank you to all our presenters tonight. This is an excellent evening to learn more about how plants can help us reduce nutrients in our lawns and lakes and other water bodies. So thanks all for joining us. So this is, in case you're wondering, basic information about harmful algal bloom. So we didn't talk too much about the basics tonight because we've covered that in some of our other presentations. You can check out the State of Michigan website, michigan.gov/HABS, for a picture guide. Frequently asked questions about HABs reports maps, which will start to be updated. I believe it's May maybe or April for this year. Report any possible blooms to algaebloom@michigan.gov and send pictures as well as the location. People will follow up on that. I also wanted to highlight that we've recently updated our Michigan Sea Grant HABs 101 resources page. So this QR code will take you there, or you can just Google HABs 101 resources, Michigan Sea Grant, and it lists a bunch of different resources. So we recently added educational resources. So if you are a teacher or work with youth at all, you might be interested in those as well. You can also find clips to our other presentations that we've done in the past. So if you just want to watch like a 15-minute version of what do I need to know about human health and harmful algal blooms, or how do I identify a harmful algal bloom? Tell me more about that. All those clips are there on the page. We also have a treatment options for small lakes, septic systems, and HABs, so check that out. Also on that page, there's a social media toolkit. So if you are associated with a lake or another group that might be interested in sharing this information, it's great to have that. These are formatted already to the right size for Facebook or Instagram, and they have suggested text as well. So that's a really easy way to spread the word about HABs. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you being here. I know it was a nice night out, so thanks for spending a little bit of it inside with us to learn more about the power of plants.